Okay. How are you? How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I haven't talked to you in a while. I know when we met, well, we kind of like met during quarantine. We have
Mhm.
a ton of mutual friends, probably more than we even realize at this point.
Yeah, I know Jason Collins is a mutual friend, and then who else did I see that we were connected to? I know
Oh,
we have a lot of them.
we have a few because I was a photographer at all the comedy clubs, and you're obviously a comedian. And so yeah, I think every time I see you post a photo with somebody, I'm like, oh, we have that person in common, or that person in common, like Adam Hunter.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Yeah, he used to have before. He was kind of ahead of his time. I don't know if you remember. He had um, like a show on YouTube or something. It was kind of like a podcast, but before podcasts were a thing. It was almost like
Yeah,
a little talk show, and I was on one of his episodes like years ago. This is like over 10 years ago.
yeah. Adam's definitely ahead of his time. I've known Adam for a long time, and he's just like he's one of those self-made, hardworking.
Hmm.
Doesn't wait for agents to pick up the phone and call him. He's
Hmm.
very much a hustler and makes the outgoing calls, and he's a hell of a joke writer and comic. On top of that, I've been performing with him for so long, and he's probably one of the best ones out there right now.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Y'all are very talented. I feel very blessed to like have seen, I don't know, so many comics like start from the very beginning. And like I was telling the story when I had Jason on here a while back, and we were talking about like when I met Chris D'Elia for the first time, and he had just started stand up, and I had just started doing photography, and we were kind of like starting at the same time at these comedy clubs, and it's just funny like seeing him and kind of how he grew. It's just really cool because I would see all you guys and go, okay, he's gonna be and it's like I was pretty right on about everybody. I'm like, these guys are gonna be amazing, and then the ones that I'm like, I don't know, like you never hear about. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you guys are all amazing.
Yeah.
So I love, I was talking to you because you started doing during quarantine these Instagram lives, which is, you asked me to do one, which
Yeah.
thank you for that. I had so much fun.
Yeah. That was a fun one.
Yeah.
Very inspirational too, and inspiring, and your story was hit home with a lot of people. I remember people like messaging me and asking about you, and
Oh,
the comments that came in. So yeah, no, thank you for doing that.
well, thank you for having me. It was so much fun, and such a great idea to do, especially during quarantine, just to like connect with people. And that's kind of actually, I had started this podcast before COVID, and then when like quarantine happened, I just didn't do it because I just thought I'll wait till we could do it in person. And after you kind of inspired me, after seeing how well it worked just over the phone, I'm like, oh,
That's
okay,
cool.
I think I can do this during quarantine. And so we started back up again. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, it was funny because when everybody went into quarantine, um, where was I? Well, I was in Aspen, Colorado for 2 months, and then I pivoted back to LA, and I continued to do them. And then I stopped doing them because um, I just got busier with other stuff. But like it started becoming like a thing. Like people were doing these Instagram lives, um, and it was really rewarding. I got to interview some really interesting people. I don't know if I could repeat that again because things have gotten busier for people, so it's hard to track
Mm-hmm.
people down. But
Yeah.
I remember calling up like, you know, anybody who had a story or somebody who was like well known in the industry, and I'd say, hey, do you mind doing an Instagram live interview, with me? And it sharpened my skills as a not podcaster, but like a almost like a journalist, which is a different muscle. You know, to answer questions is one thing, to ask them is another.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And so it was good for me in that sense. And a lot of people just surprisingly were like, "Yeah, I'll do it." But you know, you're sitting around your house all day waiting for the world to open up. You
Yep.
know, people are trying to kill time.
Yeah, I know that was kind of a plus too. People that I probably normally like wouldn't be able to get, you know, on here because their schedules are so crazy. They were like, yeah, sure. And, you know, and yeah, you were, you know, so great at doing your research because we had never met before. And you knew, like, you had, like, knew so much about me that I'm like, oh my gosh, he saw that interview or he saw that, like, you did their research. And I have to say, like, starting this podcast, it is tougher than it looks. 100%. So you did a great job. I'm like, wow, I want to get that good someday. But it's so hard. I was doing an interview the other day, and this girl, she's amazing. I had never met her before. She's, you know, my friend's sister, but I got confused on what show she was on, and I said like HGTV, and she was on like the Home and Family Network, and I'm like, uh-oh. And like she said afterward, like, you know, I wasn't on that, and I'm like, oh gosh, like it's just so like hard to keep track of everything.
Yeah.
It's definitely harder than it looks, but you
Yeah.
do amazing.
Yeah, it's a fun, you know, art form and platform. And I think doing your research, like if you know the person, it's one thing. I was interviewing a lot of people that I knew, so I didn't really have to do any research. But if I didn't know somebody, I started Googling and looking up, you know, Wikipedia and whatever research I can do on the person so I could be able to ask, you know, intelligent questions and you know, questions that hit home with the person. So yeah, thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
It's still on my, it's funny because when I first started doing them, I didn't save them. I don't know why I didn't. For some reason, I just didn't. And then you were one of the first ones I actually saved, and it's still on my IGTV, so that was cool.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I'll have to go back and look at it.
Yeah.
I just remember it being a lot of fun.
Yeah, we had a good time. It was fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I did get to learn a little bit about you, but I did like Wikipedia you because I didn't know exactly when you moved here. So your family is from Egypt. So you're Egyptian, and you moved here when you were very little.
Yeah, my parents, so there's 6 of us, 4 sisters and 1 brother. My mom and dad got married in a little city outside of Cairo, Egypt called Helwan. It's like a little farm village town. She was 16, he was 28, which over there, you know, is legal. Here it's not. So, but you know, it was back in the like late 60s, I think. So that was just like the culture back then, you know, in that part of the world. But yeah, they got married. They had my older sister and myself. And we immigrated to the U.S. in 1970. I was about a month and a half old. And we grew up in Riverside, California, near where you said you grew up in Hemet, right?
Yes, good memory. Yeah, I grew up in Hemet. We were neighbors.
Yeah, we were neighbors. So I grew up in Riverside, had a pretty normal childhood, you know, outside of my house. Went to, what was it, elementary school, Highland Elementary School, University Heights Middle School, and then John W. North High School. And played sports. I was in some of the school plays, that kind of thing. I always had this dream because I grew up watching, you know, like all those 70s and 80s sitcoms, Three's Company, Happy Days. Gosh, what else was out there? Sanford and Son. Yeah. And then later on, it became like Roseanne, Everybody Loves Raymond, you know, Tim Allen Show, all these shows, Friends. And then movies. I'd go to the movies every weekend. I'd buy 1 ticket, and then I'd bounce around from theater to theater.
Oh, yeah.
Just binge. It was almost like binge watching Netflix back then. You know, you would just go from movie to movie.
So you were pretty passionate about just like theater and acting and movies and TV and comedy from a pretty young age then.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize to what extent I would, chase that dream. At first, I was just fascinated by watching movies and TV shows. I love the idea of entertainment, comedies especially.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and I made a pretty hard decision in my head that I was going to move to Hollywood and pursue the entertainment industry. I actually had this like epiphany that I was surrounded around all these, Hollywood moguls and famous people, and not only as an actor and a comedian, but as a producer as well, which is interesting because I've become more on the producer director side of things as I've gotten older. And so, yeah, I just made a hard decision in my head that I was going to do it. I didn't tell anybody until I was a senior in high school, because I know, when you tell people, oh, I'm going to move to Hollywood and I'm going to make it, people go, oh, yeah, right. Good luck, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't like people giving me the evil eye, which is what my mom calls it.
Yeah.
And not necessarily that they're evil, but they're not rooting for you either.
Exactly. Yeah. How
So,
did your family take it when you finally told them?
They fucking gave me the evil
eye. What did they expect you to do? Did your parents have some ideal career for you?
Yeah, when you grow up in a ethnic family, especially Middle Eastern family, and specifically being the oldest son in the family, you're supposed to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or business owner of some sort. But typically it's doctor, lawyer, engineer.
Is that what your dad, what did your dad do?
Oddly enough, he wasn't any of them.
Oh, but he expected you to do it.
He expected me to do it. The parents don't necessarily follow that dream. My dad was entrepreneur, businessman. He ended up kind of being the town mechanic where I grew up. He had his own automotive shop called his name's he passed away, God rest his soul, but his name was Abu Baker, but people couldn't pronounce his name correctly, so he went by the name Baker. So he opened an automotive shop called Baker's Automotive. And he had a tow truck, and he had like 2 bins in his garage, and people would go to him because they trusted him, and he ended up kind of being the town mechanic. Then he had a couple gas stations before, during, and after, a restaurant that lasted for about 5 years. But automotive industry was kind of his jam. They were pretty disappointed when I told them I was moving to Hollywood. I remember my dad said, "What are you, a gay?" And I said, "A gay? No, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a gay. And no, I'm not gay." And he didn't talk to me for about 7 years. He was embarrassed and ashamed that I, would move to Hollywood and join a cult. He thought I was doing, and my mom supported me just because she was just nervous and afraid. She had that motherly kind of, whatever instinct of fear of their children not making it in the industry. That's really tough. I mean, as well as anybody else, this industry, the entertainment industry, can be one of the hardest industries in the world.
Yeah.
Because there is no school for it. There's no degree. There's no, you really just kind of have to have some sort of talent, some sort of look, and just hardcore tenacity and consistency. And it really is about consistency.
It really is. I know. And I get why parents freak out a little bit. I've seen both ends. I've seen where someone has a dream, and they go for it and it works for them. They're very consistent and they put everything they have into it. And then I've also seen some friends who have been doing this their entire life and they still haven't, like, they're broke, they're working 10 jobs to like try to make it. They're doing like Uber and Uber Eats and DoorDash and like all these things, and then trying to make, and then bartending and trying to make it. And they've been at it for years and years and years. And it's so tough. It's like yeah, you definitely have to have a thick skin. You hear no a lot. And you
Hmm.
have to like keep going and keep going. And like some people don't really make it until they're in their, like 50s, and that's fine. But a lot of people will finally like, give up. It's so hard to keep going sometimes, because you either come here and you make it like that, or you come here and it takes you years and years, and then you finally hit it big 20 years later. Or sometimes it just like, just
Yeah, I mean,
go crazy.
I think manifesting too plays a lot into your dreams coming true. It's like,
Hmm.
if you look at people that have made it, most of them like wrote down in their journal, I'm going to be a big star by the time I'm 50, 25 or whatever. Jim Carrey used to write checks to himself for
Oh
$1 million.
yeah. Hmm.
You hear stuff about that, meditating and
Yeah.
kind of daydreaming and visualizing where
Yes.
you want to be, and reading the right books, and surrounding yourself with people that are more talented and successful than you,
Right. Hmm.
because you just automatically kind of grab and crystallize that energy, whether you like it or not. You kind of become successful by association and osmosis, just being around it.
Right. And that's what you did. I know that you have like Vince Vaughn is one of your good friends,
Hmm.
and you have, I mean, quite a few amazing, talented friends that kind of that you've met when well, you could tell the story, but I know that you met them and surrounded yourself by pretty successful people, and that kind of, like you said, like bringing yourself around those people, they bring you up. And so
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned Vince, because he's like, out of all my friends and that are in the entertainment industry, he's probably the most like hardcore manifester. Like
oh really.
the way his brain works and the way he thinks, he's super highly intelligent, force of nature. And and I met Vince before he was famous.
Mm.
Um,
Okay.
Nobody knew who he was. He was literally an unknown actor. And I met him on an after school special called The Fourth Man. And it was him and this actor who I'm also best friends with, who we're all still friends to this day, this guy named Peter Billingsley. And Peter Billingsley was in a film called A Christmas Story,
Hmm.
that they play every year on like
Yeah.
TBS. And he was a big child star. He was like the Macaulay Culkin of our time. And
Yeah.
he was in commercials and on TV shows. And anyway, he was in this after school special where he played a computer nerd who had a crush on this actress named Nicole Eggert. I don't know if you remember her. She was in Baywatch and Charles in Charge. She was like the
Oh,
daughter of
okay.
the blonde girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she was like the hot chick in the show, and he wanted to date her, but she only dated jocks. So he joined the track team to impress her, but he wasn't fast enough, so he took steroids.
Okay.
That was the after school special, like don't do drugs and that kind
Yeah.
of thing. And Vince Vaughn played the star quarterback of the football team, who was like, I'm going to tell the coach, you're doing steroids. And he's like, you better not. And they got this whole thing. And I was an extra. It was the first extra job I had ever had.
How old were
I,
you?
I was 19.
Oh wow. So you had just finished high school, came out here, and that was like your first thing.
Yep. I started, I just wanted to see what it was like, because I wasn't sure if it was for me. And then I'd heard a story about Clint Eastwood, that he was an extra on like in movies and TV shows before he became Clint Eastwood. He just wanted to study. Like, it's a great, if you do it forever, it's kind of loserville.
Mhm.
But if you're when you get into the entertainment industry, being an extra on a movie or TV set is the best paid education you can
Mhm.
get, because you get to just
100%. Yeah.
study everything and eyeball everything and see how the cameras work and how the production works and this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
And so I decided to sign up with this extra agency. They were called Central Casting at the time, I think. And the first job they called me for was to play one of the track team members on this after school special. And so I went down there and I was on it for like 4 days, I remember. And I remember Vince Vaughn coming on to say, I knew who Peter Billings it was because he had been a big child star, but his career was starting to descend a little bit. Mm-hmm. And now he's real well-known producer and director, stuff like that. But, acting was his jam for a second. But Vince Vaughn, unknown at the time, walked on set, and I had no idea who he was. And he's like Chicago kid, real snappy, fast talker.
Yeah.
He just, what you see is what you get. Back when he was younger, he was very, very much that guy. Mm-hmm. And I was like, who's this fucking guy? Because he was just so electric when he came onto the set. And like I said, fast talking, really funny. And he had a little honey wagon trailer, like the size of a closet. And I remember we broke for lunch, and all the actors either got their lunch and went to their trailer or sat with the paid actors. And then all the extras got like these little sandwiches. And we had to go sit with the extras. Mm-hmm. So I'm walking over to the area where the extras were with my sandwich, and Vince's door was open to his honey wagon trailer. And he's like, hey. I go, hey. He goes, come on in here, have lunch with me. And I was like, oh, I can't, I'm an extra. I don't want to get in trouble. He was like, fuck that. I'll vouch for you. Come on in. So I came in, and it was a trailer. We sat down, had lunch. We talked for an hour, and we just bonded like right away on several levels. And that's how we became friends. We've been friends ever since.
That is amazing. I love that.
And he's been really influential in my, not only as a friend, but like in my career quite a bit. He produced a tour called Vince Vaughn's Wild West Comedy Show with myself and Brett Ernst and Sebastian Maniscalco, who became a big comedian recently. And John Caparella was in it. A bunch of other stars were in it. And he was the executive producer of Sullivan and Son, which was a sitcom I was on for 3 years. So, I've been in a couple of his movies, like Small Parts, The Breakup, Fred Claus, Swingers. I was in Swingers for a second. It's funny, a couple of the movies that I was in, he would just call me up and say, hey, I'm producing this movie. Do you want to come do a couple lines in it? Sure. And I remember getting cut out of a couple of the movies, but I ended up in the bonus features.
Oh, yeah.
Which was funny. So I started a production company called Bonus Features Productions.
That's amazing.
I literally was like in the bonus features of like 5 movies. I was just like,
it happens all the time. That is hilarious. You have to laugh. Like, it happens all the time. Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. So you basically you move here and you meet Vince, and immediately you start getting work, it sounds like, and then you're making friends that last forever. And no,
I didn't get work right away. I did my thing as an extra. Mm-hmm. Vince and I became friends. I said, look, I really want to pursue this acting thing. He said, well, you need to go to acting classes. I said, yeah, I'd love to. He said, let me introduce you to my acting teacher. His name was Cliff Osmond at the time. And so I started taking acting classes once a week with this guy, Cliff Osmond, and I started getting my chops as an actor. Well, during that time, I was working as a waiter, personal trainer, doing anything I could to kind of pay the bills. And then I started getting little tiny bit parts, like in soap operas and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, like they called them under 5s back then. 5 lines, you get 5 lines or under.
Oh, okay.
And then I felt like I could take my acting to the next level. So I really wanted to train as an actor. So I quit for a while and I went to the Academy of Dramatic Arts. It was called the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. It was like a theater arts school in Pasadena. And then I didn't get invited back because they told me that they didn't want film and TV actors. They wanted thespians.
Oh. Okay.
And I was like, well, I want to be on fucking, film and TV. So, and then so that I didn't get invited back, but then I went on to work. That's when I went on to work quite a bit. Most of the parts that I took back in the day were like the terrorist or the cab driver or the sleazy Arab guy, or there was always like the stereotype, role that I was getting cast in. And I was lucky because I was making money. I was in that 2 percentile of like working actors, but it was like, I'm from Riverside. I'm a California boy, but my name was killing me, Ahmed Ahmed. And my agent at the time was like, you need to change your name if you want to continue to work, and play mainstream roles. And I just said no. And she's like, well, I'll call you if something comes up, but casting is only going to bring you in for terrorist and cab driver parts. So I said, only call me if there's like the friend or the doctor or the lawyer, or the, just regular guy. And then the phone stopped ringing. So I ran out of money. I remember sleeping on Vince Vaughn's couch, which was interesting. And then, and I went back to waiting tables. So I had a good year where I was making money as an actor, but then my ego and my whatever you want to call it, stubbornness, because I didn't want to change my name, led me to not, be able to be even called in for any regular parts.
But I think that speaks a lot about you, and I wouldn't change my name either. I think that's, obviously what we're dealing with a lot now is that it's kind of bullshit that they would only cast you for those roles and that your name would affect your career. I think that's a huge problem that we're, trying to change right now. So kudos to you for not changing, your name and staying strong and, not wanting those roles because you knew that you had more talent than that, you're better than that, and you wanted the real roles, which you deserve. So,
well, looking back on it, I feel like if I would have changed my name, I probably would have worked more. But there was something in my soul that just didn't want to give that up to Hollywood. I didn't want to not that I would sell my soul, but I would be giving up my birth-given name. And I was so connected to my name and my heritage and my culture. And so, but the good news is my name, Ahmed Ahmed, helped me as a comedian, which I didn't see coming. So, God has a plan, the universe has a plan. And the plan for me was stick to your guns, don't change your name, and you'll see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I was waiting tables at this restaurant in Pasadena. It was called Twin Palms at the time. Kevin Costner used to own.
Yeah.
Did you remember that restaurant?
Yeah,
Twin Palms?
I do. Yeah, yeah.
Like a country French cuisine, a little high end. At the time, Kevin Costner was at the top of his game, so a lot of people were going there just to see if he was there. I was like one of the head waiters at the time. I was making a lot of money at 24 years old, working like 4 nights a week as a waiter. I just had this gift of gab and this kind of fun, charismatic, I would make it fun for people to eat, and crack jokes. And I'd comp desserts and crack open wine and light cigars. And it was almost like I had a seat at the table for every table I was serving. And that translated into big tips. And one night, this older woman came in. She was probably in her 80s. And she had 4 of her older sons with her. They were all gay. Like very obviously gay. Wearing ascots and suits and very astute and glasses. And I remember making them laugh the whole night. And at the end of the night, the old woman put $300 in my hand. And she said, that's for you. And I said, oh, well, we all split the tips here. We pull tips. And she's like, I'll tip everybody out. That's strictly for you. Don't give it to anybody. And I said, oh, this is too much money. I can't take this. Why are you giving me this money? And she said, we had the best time we've ever had. We don't come here for the food. We come here for the service. You gave us great service, and you're very funny. You should be a comedian. And I looked at her, and it was almost like the world stopped. You know, there was a live band. There's 500 people. It was outside. It was very noisy. And everything just kind of morphed and stopped. And I just looked right at her intently. And I said, you think you know funny? And she goes, of course I do. Look at all my sons. And they all started laughing and clapping. Oh, mother. And, you know, it was a fun moment. And then I figured, look, as a waiter or as a bartender, you know, it's all about customer service and making people laugh and having a good time. And I thought, all right, well, if I can do that already, let me just move the food out of the way and go right to the consumer. And that's what stand-up comedy is, really, is kind of being a funny waiter without giving people food. And that's where it kind of transitioned into. I took her advice, and a month later, I found this open mic night at a place called the LA Cabaret Comedy Club on Ventura Boulevard in the Valley. It doesn't exist anymore. But I was driving down the street after a work session, and I saw this sign in the window: open mic night tonight, 7:00, sign up at 6. So I pulled in there, I signed up. I wrote like maybe 5 jokes or stories about my family. I went up on stage for 5 minutes in front of 40 comedians that were also there for the open mic, and I made them laugh. And I was like, oh shit, I'm pretty good, you know? If I can make comedians laugh, then, you know, the rest is no problem. And then I continued to do these open mics, and I bombed for the next like 2 years.
I was gonna say, how did the first open mic go? Because that's I gotta give you guys props, because that is terrifying. I had a dream once that I did an open mic and bombed, and I'm like, and I'm not even like, never ever have wanted to do stand-up or anything, but I mean, was it terrifying, like the first open mic that you ever did?
Well, the first one I did, I just told you about, was at the LA Cabaret.
But you made them laugh, the comics, but like the first, like the audience, just regular.
Yeah, I mean, so most open mics are typically filled with comedians.
I didn't know that, because I've been to open mics and I thought it was just.
I mean, you'll have audience members. I don't know now because I haven't done them in quite a while, but in the beginning it was mostly comics. And then you'd go to some open mics and get, you know, lucky to have some stage time, and then there were audience members there. And yeah, I mean, I bombed quite a bit in the beginning. And then I don't know what happened. Like the worm turned, some weird like magical, you know, intervention happened where I think I just started personalizing my stories a little bit more. Also, you know, I was religiously studying other comics. So I'd go to the comedy clubs 5, 6, 7 nights a week and just sit in the back of the room till 2 in the morning and just watch. I wanted to see the tricks of the trade. You know, you can't teach stand-up comedy, but you can learn some tricks of the trade. And that's kind of what happened. After a couple years, I wrote my first like 10 minutes, like strong 10 minutes. And then you kind of take that 10 minutes around town, and then people start to recognize that, okay, this person's coming up on the scene. And, you know, at the time, there weren't any Middle Eastern comics on the scene. I was like the only guy. And then there were a couple other ones kind of lingering around. And then I eventually started my own comedy night at a place called Dublin's. I don't know if you remember Dublin's on Sunset Boulevard.
I don't remember.
I remember, Jay-Z's song "Bubbling at Dublin's" and all that. And we had this because I couldn't get booked at the comedy clubs; they wouldn't pass me. And then sometimes you go to these, you kind of just had to linger around the comedy scene for a minute to get any sort of credibility. But I wasn't getting passed. And I've always been one, it's kind of like what I'm doing now. It's funny that I'm kind of repeating my pattern from 20 years ago. But when I don't get passed at a club or don't get something like that goes my way, I'll go start my own thing. Like I have this whole saying, if you don't get invited to the party, make your own party. Like buy your own house, get your own food and liquor, get a DJ, you know what I mean? Like metaphorically.
Yeah.
And so I was like, fuck this, I'm not gonna wait around for the club. So I started this night at a place called Dublin's, which coincidentally was right in between the Laugh Factory and the Comedy Store. So we sucked all the energy out of that place and took it to our room. And so at the time we had unknown at the time Dane Cook, Dave Chappelle, Daryl Hammond, Leslie Jones, Zach Galifianakis, Ken Jeong. That's when Vince Vaughn was coming in quite a bit. He'd come in and watch the shows every week. And Sebastian Maniscalco, Brett Ernst, Bobby Lee, the list went on and on. Yeah. Unknowns and knowns, and then everybody in between. And then that show got so popular, it got me an invitation back to the Comedy Store. And that's how I got passed at the Comedy Store. And then Mitzi Shore, who was the owner at the time, God rest her soul, that's Pauly Shore's mom.
Yeah.
She took a real liking to me. She was just a real sweet woman who was very clairvoyant. She had a vision. She could tell if somebody was funny just by looking at them, And she passed me at the Comedy Store. And then and then there were two other comics that were there from the Middle East, and she started a show called the Arabian Nights, which we later called the Axis of Evil Comedy Tour. And it was right when President Bush was in office, and he coined the phrase Axis of Evil. So we took it and put Comedy Tour in the end, and we were the first Middle Eastern comedy show ever to be on Comedy Central, national television. We toured all over the Middle East, sold 20,000 tickets, sold out shows. I made a documentary about it called Just Like Us. And she had predicted it. She actually told me straight up, you're going to go to the Middle East and you're going to bring comedy to the Middle East. And at the time I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so she kind of prophesized my career quite a bit.
Wow. That is
and
amazing.
So since then, my comedy kind of translated globally. I've been to 50 countries around the world. I've spent a lot of time in Dubai, in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Lebanon, Kuwait.
So amazing. And what does your family think now? Because I know they were hesitant to have you do this. So when they saw you start to kind of blow up and go to all these different countries, and were they proud, or they?
Oh yeah. Well, when I got my first part in my first big terrorist film, it was a film called Executive Decision with Kurt Russell, Halle Berry, and Steven Seagal. I played terrorist number 4, I think it was. My dad was like, "Oh, that's my son. We always knew,
We always knew."
I was like, "No, you didn't. You called me gay." And then I quit. I quit acting for a while, and my parents were like, my dad was like, "Okay, good. You had a nice run. Now go back to school and be a doctor or lawyer or whatever." I was like, "You don't understand. I'm not doing that. Whatever." And he's like, "Well, what are you gonna do? What's the next?" And I said, "I'm gonna be a stand-up comic." And he was like, "Oh, really?" And so because I started from scratch, I started over. I had a nice career as an actor, even though I was playing stereotypical parts, but I was in big movies and TV shows and stuff, and working with these big stars. And then when I quit, went back to waiting tables, and then transitioned, back into the industry as a comic. I literally just like wiped my slate clean and started from scratch. I was, I think, 24, 25 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started getting past at all the comedy clubs, the Laugh Factory, the Improv, the Comedy Stores. Kind of a weird dream come true. It wasn't really translating into money, but on any given weekend, I'd have my name on all three marquees on all three clubs, which is a hard thing.
Amazing.
That's a
Very
hard thing to
hard.
do.
Yeah.
So I had that happen for a minute. And then I was traveling all over the Middle East mostly, but around the world, went to, like I said, 40, 50 different countries. The internet was just kind of booming at the time, so it was easy for people to go online and check my clips and Google me and all that. And then I felt like, well, then I was on a sitcom. I was on Sullivan and Son for a minute, so that kept me in town. And that was nice. That's just I didn't even audition. They just called me up and said, we're going to give you this part.
That's amazing.
And it's nice.
That doesn't really happen very often.
It doesn't happen often if you're not known, and I wasn't known. It's, to me, to this day, I'm still not known. But I got to work. I had a job for 3 years. I had a parking space with my name on it, a dressing room with my name on it, and a chair with my name on it. And it was a lot of fun. I worked with really talented people. And then when that ended, there was this kind of like, it's like the world stopped because my agents let me go, my manager let me go, my lawyer decided he didn't want to work with me anymore. Like my career was kind of falling apart slowly, one little by little, in a weird way.
What do you know why all of a sudden that?
Well, when you're hot, you're hot. When you're not, you're not. And I take, I don't blame the industry. I take, full accountability for not keeping up to speed with like social media and like putting out more content. And I should have started a podcast. And there were things that I just didn't do because I had my focus on other stuff, like my documentary, this documentary that I made called Just Like Us. It's currently on YouTube for free. If you just go to Cross Cultural Productions on YouTube. It was on Netflix, it was on Showtime, it was on Stars, and we got the licensing back for it, and now we just put it on YouTube for free. But that took 3 years of my life, making a documentary. It was a very, very hard thing to do. And so I kind of took my eye off the ball with other stuff because I was so invested in this thing. We won awards, and it was critically acclaimed. It didn't make money. Documentaries typically don't make money. But it was a great feather in my cap and a great accomplishment for me. And it's something I can look at and say, oh, it's part of my body of work that I've put out there. My dad is in it, funny enough. I put my dad in the documentary, and he steals the show in the documentary because my dad's really funny. And so, yeah, and then I feel like the comedy industry was kind of imploding a little bit around 2015. It's funny because all the comedy clubs that I mentioned to you, the Laugh Factory, the Comedy Store, I ended up getting banned from those places eventually.
Why?
Haters want to hate. Our industry is very cutthroat and it's very competitive. And comics typically just don't like each other. I have more of a producer mentality, so I don't really think like that. And I've helped out a lot of comics, but everyone's just looking out for themselves. And at the time, I won't name names, but there are a couple comics that really kind of had it out for me and they didn't want me around. I think I was just too full of light, and the darkness kind of overshadowed that. And so they all kind of circled their wagons and, made sure I wasn't performing there anymore.
I will say, working at those places for so long and getting to know a lot of comics, it was almost like a high school, and there were cliques. And those cliques, they looked out for each other. They gave each other jobs. They made sure that they were taken care of. And then the ones that they decided they didn't like, they made sure that they didn't go to these places. Yeah, and everybody had their cliques. And it's interesting as just a photographer at these places, but because I'm pretty outgoing, I got to know everybody. I would take their headshots. They'd ask me, "Can you take photos of me on stage?" And I'll slip you some money, whatever. And so and then going out to eat after and all that, I got to know all these people, and I'm kind of in the middle of it, and I'm like, well, why don't you like this guy? Like, I don't understand. He's such a great guy. And like, but everybody had their cliques, so I totally get it. And they would like cutthroat if they didn't like somebody or they thought that they stole their joke or whatever. It would be like they would be calling people up, don't ever let him in this club again, or
Yeah.
I'm never coming back, type of
Yeah.
thing. And
Yeah. I mean, that's like when I was at the Comedy Store, I was kind of at the top of my game as a comic. And Mitzi Shore really took a liking to me, like I said. And, I was an actor for a long time, and I had like celebrity friends before I got to the comedy scene. So I'd show up to the Comedy Store on any given Friday or Saturday night, and Vince Vaughn would be on my right side, and Tom Morello's the guitar player for Rage Against the Machine would be on my left side, and we'd have hot chicks with us and actors, and it was like I'd kind of come in with an entourage, and it wasn't to like show anybody off. We all would go hang out on Sunset Boulevard and drink, but they would come watch me first. And I'd say, okay, well, let's go down to the whatever Standard, the Sky Bar, the whatever Bellage Hotel for drinks afterwards. They're like, oh, we're going to come watch your set. So I'd walk in with like, just the young Hollywood scene, sometimes 10 deep. And I remember Joe Rogan at the time he would sit in the back parking lot, smoke weed, and every time I'd walk back, typically when it was by myself, he would always slow clap me and go, Ahmed, everybody, Ahmed, Mayor of Hollywood, Mayor of Hollywood. And I used to just go, hey, Joe, and then I had a falling out with a comic that he was friends with. And he called up the comedy, I know this for a fact, he called up the Comedy Store and he said, if Ahmed's name is on the lineup, I'm not going to perform there.
Joe Rogan said that?
Joe Rogan. So that Friday night, spots came out, and he wasn't on the list, but I was. And he called the club furious. What the fuck's going on? Why is this happening? And the booker at the time said, Mitzi Shore told me to tell you, don't tell her how to run her club. And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
And then about 2 weeks later, he had an incident with this comic named Carlos Mencia on stage. And it was on YouTube, it went viral.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it put a black eye on the reputation of the Comedy Store. And so he got banned after that. He was banned for almost 15 years. And in 2015-16, when she started getting sick and she didn't have a lot of control of the club anymore, she eventually passed. The changing of the guards happened. New management, new booker, new everything. And that's when Rogan came back in. And that's when I got phased out. So it's interesting how it came back. Yeah. He came back to avenge me.
Yeah. Gosh.
And it was funny because I just stopped getting spots. They didn't tell me I was banned, but I stopped getting spots, and I was really like curious what the fuck's going on. And I reached out to the talent booker at the time, and I said, hey, what's happening? And he sent me a text message like an idiot saying, I've been instructed by comedians to not book you. And I was like, whoa, now the inmates are running the joint, they're running the asylum. And I knew who it was, but he wouldn't tell me who it was, but I knew who it was. I knew Joe had a hand in it. And then I got phased out of there. And then all I call them the Roganites, all his little cronies, and they all started to turn on me. Guys that I was friends with.
Mm,
So I was like, the comedy world's really petty and
it
people take
is.
sides and it's very backstabby and high schooly, and I didn't like it. Um, and then about 6 months later, it happened at the Laugh Factory. Similar situation, different comic.
Mhm.
Um, and then I just had enough. I just said, well, enough was enough. Fuck the comedy scene. The LA comedy scene is petty and childish, and I can't stand it. And so I moved to Asia for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And I just got up. I got a job offer to work for a comedy events company in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I took it. I was performing. I was working in the office 9 to 5 during the day, and I'd do stand-up comedy at night. And on the weekends, I would go to Singapore, Vietnam, Thailand, Bali,
Wow.
China, Japan. I was really just touring all over Asia. I was really having a blast in Asia. Excuse me. And then I was really had like a hand in the comedy scene in Asia, and it was great because I was kind of like I wasn't a big fish in a little pond, but I was gathering information. I was doing my collecting data. I was really like writing a new act, and I did. I wrote a whole new hour of material when I was in Asia, um, and then I eventually left because I felt like the Asian comedy scene still needed to grow a little bit more,
Mhm.
and I was just kind of getting burned out on it. And I came back about 2 months before the pandemic, before COVID.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that recent that you had been back.
And then I came back I came back to New York for a minute, and then I went on a ski trip with my business partner and his family to Aspen, Colorado, 2 days before the pandemic, and then we got stuck there for 2 months.
Oh my God.
And then then I ended up being like a private chefing for his family because I cook, and that's kind of my jam is cooking. But and then I eventually pivoted back. Sorry about that. You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Somebody tried to call me.
Oh,
Um, and then I eventually ended up pivoting back to Venice, to LA, in Venice Beach, where I live.
mhm.
You're in Santa Monica, right?
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
neighbors again.
I know.
It is
So
pretty crazy, like hearing your story and hearing some of the names that you were talking about. You just always wonder. I just find it fascinating how small of a world it is, and just picturing like the timeline of you going to all these comedy clubs and like partying after at like the Standard or the W or wherever. Like, we used to go to Mel's Diner all the time. There was a time where
mhm.
like Chris, Dalia, and Jason and we would all like go. I think Joe Coy went a couple of times. Like we would go to Mel's after and like go grab drinks somewhere. And it's like, the same people. We know so many of the same people. And I've
Yeah,
had these nights with like some of the names that you mentioned, and we probably crossed paths so many times and didn't really realize it. And the fact that we both grew up, like you're in Riverside, I'm in Hemet, and like, neighbors. And then here, Venice, Santa Monica, it's like, it's just interesting. And like, you've done all these other things since then. And it's like, it's just interesting how everything kind of is intertwined, all these lives.
yeah. I think for me, like life's about timing.
Mhm.
Timing is everything. Sometimes it's funny because I've become friends with people that I never thought I'd be friends with, and
Mhm.
I've unfriended, people that I thought I would be friends with forever.
Same,
Uh,
yeah. Yeah.
and during the pandemic, people brought out the best and the worst of themselves. I'm guilty and famous for both. But I when I got back to Venice, the clubs were shut down. The comedy scene just got clobbered. And I was just kind of twiddling my thumbs. I was doing these Instagram live interviews. I was just trying to, just do something to keep me sane.
Mhm.
And I decided, let's start just doing comedy underground, outside, it's kind of like a speakeasy
Mhm.
prohibition type of show.
Mhm.
And so I did. We started the show a few months back called Venice Comedy Compound. It's right around the corner from my house. It's actually in Harrison Ford's kids' old compound. They used to own this place.
Okay.
And it started to pick up, and I started getting, really people that I've known for a while, but like comics that are famous now who weren't famous 10 years ago. Like,
I've seen some of the guests that you've had recently.
yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting who I call up and who says yes, who says no, and
like
who
Tiffany
just doesn't.
Haddish you just had, right?
Tiffany Haddish, we just had her. She was homeless, living out of her car.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill Burr, he wasn't famous 10 years ago. He was well known, but he wasn't famous.
Mm-hmm.
I called up Bill Burr out of the blue one afternoon, and he just I just had his number on my phone, and I said, I'm gonna fucking call Bill Burr. I called him up, and he was like, hello. I said, hey, Bill, it's Ahmed. He goes, Ahmed, what's going on? I said, thanks for taking my call. What do you mean, thanks for taking your call? I know you 20 fucking years. Of course I'm going to take your fucking call.
I love that.
What's going on? How you been? What are you doing during this pandemic? What's going on? Tell me what's going on. I said, look, man, I started this comedy night in Venice Beach. Would you mind coming down and, gracing our stage with your presence? And he's like, yeah, of course I will. So he's been there 5 times since, and he runs his whole hour. And he's coming back again next week. So, guys like that I respect because they're not too good.
Right.
They're,
yeah.
Tiffany Haddish, same thing. We had, Jeff Ross was in there recently. Michael Rappaport came through there. Jeremy Piven, who's been doing a lot of stand-up comedy recently, he's been popping in. And then all these like very, very funny but unknown comics that come on the reg. Like Adam Hunter, he's been there a couple times. He's not necessarily household name famous, but he's one of the best comics in the game right now. So I kind of just went back into my Rolodex and I reached out to 100% of the comics that I like, and I'd say about 80% have responded and or come into the room. So that's, for me, that's a good percentage.
Yeah, that's
and great. The others who don't reply or who say no, too bad for them.
It's interesting that you say that because I'm kind of going through that with like you said, like people that you think are your friend or that you'd be friends with forever, and then people that you never think would be your friend. I'm kind of going through that right now with this podcast. I've had friends that are in the industry that I've had for years that I've never asked anything of, ever. Like I've never asked anything of them. And if anything, like some of them I've trained for free. I've helped them out when they've needed it in some way or another. And now that I have this podcast, I ask them, I'm like, hey, would you want to come on as a guest, and either crickets, or I've had a few of them completely like stop following me on Instagram, like, and we had been friends for a long time. I ask one thing of them and they just delete me from their life. And
it's interesting. I don't know why people do that.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, like, it's not like I just became your friend and I asked something of you right off the bat, like I've been your friend for a long time. I've never asked you for anything. I know people that have asked, I'm not going to like drop names, but people have said, oh, this person, can you get me a ticket to their show? Can you get me a ticket to their concert? Can you get them to do this or this? And I've never, ever, I'm like, no, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. And so this is the first thing I've asked of them, is just to come on as a guest. And I'm like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. They're at home. Maybe they'll be open to it. And not only do they not reply, they just like cut me out of their life. I'm like, oh, okay. And then there are some people that I would never think would say yes. And they're like, of course I would. Like, come on. And it's interesting because a lot of these, a lot of these people, I'm like, you should understand more than anybody that in this town, it really is just who you know, timing. Like it has nothing to do with, are you a better person than me? Are you have more talent than me? Like they should know more than anybody that it's just they've struggled, they've made it, and now, you know, that'll either, like you were saying, like it'll either change you for, you know, in a bad way, in a negative way,
Mhm.
or you'll stay the same and you'll just have this appreciation for life. And like you were saying, Bill Burr will say, of course, like, why wouldn't I have known you for 25 years?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. I mean, going back to comedians, I think out of all the artists that exist in our industry, comedians, they're kind of the worst when it comes to social interaction, and they're like just uncomfortable with stuff like that. I would say for you, the reason why people are probably saying no to you is one of two things. They're either jealous of whatever you're doing, or they are in, not intimidated, afraid that you're gonna take a piece of their soul, you know,
Okay.
and they don't want to give that up for free, that kind of thing. Like I've had a couple comics say no to me because the money wasn't good enough, and I'm like, motherfucker, you're not working anyway. Like, nothing's open. Nothing's open, you know. Or
Yeah.
like we'll do, or they're like, you know, like we want to do like a live stream. You know, can we stream your comedy? No, I'm trying to save it for my special. When? For 4 years? The material's going to be old. Like just
I
write a new
know.
bit. And it's weird. And I've had, you know, I've even had, the good news is I have a lot of comics that are reaching out to me, so I don't really need anybody. If you're funny, great. If you're funny and famous, even better. I did have one comic who burned me right before the pandemic. It was interesting. We were supposed to start a show together, and he just straight up like cut me out. Like a, you know, we were very shrewd and very like not professional. And I just went, all right. You know, in the past, I used to argue with people and make it a whole, you know, that's bullshit. You know the fuck. You know, I used to have this. I always tell people I'm a pretty good actor. I'm a horrible reactor. You know, and I think reacting, now that I'm getting older, I'm becoming more like Zen-like and not overreacting. Just taking a pause, appreciating the answer that the person gave me, let it go, and move on. And that's
Sorry, my dog's barking. Yeah, so she's like probably wanting to go out, but no, I agree, and I feel like the same. When I was younger, I had like a temper, I would say, like especially in relationships. But now, for example, with like the few people that have kind of like stopped follow me or whatever, another thing in this town is that people will be nice to your face and then talk shit behind your back, or like, you know, like these people have done, like stop following me or whatever, and like hope I don't notice and just kind of stay quiet. And if I see them out and about, I am somebody who I've realized as I get older, I'm not going to react with words. I'm just going to act like you don't exist. And so I just will like see them and they'll go, oh, hi. And I just don't want to deal with the fakeness. Like, don't say hi and act like we're fine when we both know. And so I'll just ignore them and I'll just keep walking, because I don't want to give any fake energy back, because I don't like that to me. And so I don't want to act like everything's fine and say hi. And I also now know what that person is about, and I don't really want to like take my time or energy to confront them. So I'm just like, whatever. And I just keep going. I don't know if that's healthy or not, but that's how I've been dealing with things recently.
I think that's the healthiest way to approach it, because what are you going to do? Try to entangle them, and you know, and you're going to try to blame them and point, like, if the person isn't taking accountability for anything, you know, hey, I said something bad about you, I want to say I'm sorry, you didn't deserve that, or whatever it is. But if they're being fake about it, that's a different story. And I also believe that silence is power. So not saying anything kind of lets people know you're not on my diet anymore. You know,
Right.
I'm not interested in that kind of meal. There was a comic, he's not even a comic, he's the guy I was telling you who kind of burned me right before the pandemic. He had when our Venice shows, which you got to come to sometime.
Yes, I would love to.
When our Venice show started getting hot, I started getting bookers from like Vegas and Orange County, not bookers, venue owners, saying, "Hey, I see you're booking this awesome comedy show, and we have a space in Vegas. You know, do you want to come do it there? Comedy Compound in Vegas, Comedy Compound Huntington Beach. Let's just branch out the brand." I said, "Absolutely." So I started taking on all these other venues and kind of becoming like a talent buyer, booker, which I never thought I would be, but I like playing chess and booking people and, you know, giving comics work. It makes me feel good if they appreciate it. But then these people start going to the venue owners in Vegas or in whatever city and saying, "Hey, we want to do a show in your thing." And they're like, Ahmed's already doing it. And they would say, "Yeah, well, fuck that guy. We can do it better." And then they're like, "Oh, I don't think so. Goodbye." And then they'll call me up and say, "Do you know so-and-so?" I'm like, "Yeah. They said this, that, and the other thing about you." And I told them to fuck off. And I was like, "Thank you." Because I didn't have to do it.
Right. Well, wouldn't it be interesting if after all these years and the comedians that have kind of made it impossible for you to be at this club or the other club, if you just became like the next big like Laugh Factory or Comedy Store and just your venues are and it kind of the tables got turned? That'd be
Yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily doing it for that reason. It just kind of happens to it's starting to just turn into that. I had a comic reach out to me a few weeks ago and he was like, "Hey, I heard you're running this show in Venice. My friend bought a ticket to go see Eliza Schlesinger. I was going to come to the show. I hope that's okay. I wanted to, when you get a chance, when you call me, I want to clear the air with you." And I texted him back and I said, "You cleared the air when you burned me." I said, I'm good. I can breathe now. I said, "But if you bought a ticket and you're a paying customer, feel free, come to the show. But I don't need to have a conversation with you. And I wish you the best." And that was it. And he replied with, you know, "Thank you." He didn't show up to the show, actually.
Oh, he didn't.
But no, I think kind of killing people with kindness is my new mantra.
Yeah.
You know, even if, and I have a temper and I get mad at things and I get frustrated and I like to shoot my mouth off here and there, but I try to just either ignore like you do, or just take a deep breath and say, you know, "I wish you the best, you know, on your journey." And who knows? Like, never say never. You know, I've had ex-girlfriends that I thought I'd never get back together with, and we did some weird way. You know, the universe kind of brought us back together, like sat us next to a table at a restaurant, like that kind of weird shit.
Yeah.
That happened one time. I was in a restaurant after I was dating a girl for a few years and we broke up, and I hadn't talked to her for 6 months, seen her, talked to her, called her, nothing. I just went radio silent. So did she. And she ended up sitting in a booth right next to me and my friends at this table with her friends. And the booth had, you know, high, like, chairs.
Yeah.
So you couldn't see who was in the booth. But she had gone to the women's restroom, and one of the girls that was in our group had also gone to the women's restroom at the same time. And she was like, "Oh my God, hey," because they knew each other.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Who are you here with?" She's like, "I'm here with my friends." "Who are you here with?" She's like, "I'm actually here with Ahmed and his friends." And she was like, "Oh, well, you should come over and say hi." And she's like, "No, I don't know." So anyway, she ended up coming over and said hi. And that kind of like was what brought us back together. And it was a brief reunited, you know, situation. But I just thought it was weird that maybe there was like closure that had to happen there. I think sometimes the universe will align things and people for you to have some sort of closure. Mm-hmm. I've come to the belief that you find closure within. You don't really need to seek it out. No one's ever going to give you closure. Well, I'll never call Joe Rogan and be like, fuck you. And
right.
I've never confronted him to this day about it, and I never will.
Well, I think
I've talked about it on podcasts.
Yeah, I think sorry, she's like going so crazy. I think that, you know, during COVID, I read a book called The Four Agreements, and I don't know if you've read it, but I think the main takeaway that I took away from it was that you can't take things so personally, because it's typically not about you at all. It's about them, whether it be jealousy or insecurity or whatever it is. Whatever happens to you from, you know, that somebody else does to you, or it's most likely not about you. So just as long as you're impeccable with your word, as long as, you know, like, you're just worried about yourself and you don't really, like, if something happens to you, just know that it's not personal. It's their stuff. It's not your stuff. It's really helped me a lot, I think, when it comes to stuff like that, with relationships, with things like, you know, I had a relationship that ended recently where, you know, in the beginning, he said, you know, yes, I'll move. We were a little long distance. And he's like, I will move tomorrow to be with you. I will, yes, 100%. If it gets to that point of marriage, like, I will be here. And he wasn't impeccable with his word. I read this book and I'm like, you're not being, but he like can change his mind. It came time to like, okay, we've been together for 8 months. Like, what are we doing? And he's like, yeah, I can't move there. Would you move here? Kind of turn it on me almost like, well, you're going to let this relationship go if you don't move here. Well, no, I was honest from day one. You're the one not being honest. If you can't move here, then we have to be done. He's like, well, I can't move there. My life is here. Okay. I didn't get upset. I just said, okay, this is it. It is what it is. I can't, it's not about me. It's not like he didn't love me enough. It's not like I am not good enough. I didn't look at it that way at all. He didn't make me feel that way. It was him. It was his personal stuff. He chose to stay with his family, with his career. And that was all it was. I could have very easily, and back in the day, I would have said, oh my God, like, he lied, or he didn't like love me enough, or I wasn't enough, you know, and it really had nothing to do with me. And I think living that way has like been very zen for me recently, like just realizing, and just with past stuff that I've, you know, dealt with. You
seem like you have a really good zen thing going.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's funny because we've never even met in person.
No, we've never met in person.
But I feel like I know you because I watch you on Instagram and stuff. But I mean, you've always seemed like you've had a calm zen vibe about you. But I feel like right now you're in your zone.
But thank you for saying that. I am in a very good place. I see a holistic doctor every week. I have a hypnotherapist. I'm just all the things. Like, I go to church. It's like no one understands me. I'm like, you know, a rare breed. But I think all of the things that I'm doing, the books that I'm reading, the things that I do every day, and then just like, you know, working out, obviously. And it all kind of goes hand in hand. And I think that right now I'm in just a really good place of also just not having, I don't know about you, but I had this, I guess, idea of how my life was going to be, which is not that way at all. And I am finally at peace with it, and actually like very happy that I am where I am, because sometimes I've realized that what I think might make me happy actually, you know, I don't think actually would. I'm starting to realize that now. Like, why hasn't this worked out or that worked out? And I'm like, well, maybe it wasn't meant to. Maybe I would have gotten those things and I wouldn't have been happy at all. And so I am just kind of going with the flow and just really appreciating life for today. If this is all it is and the world stopped tomorrow, then I would be fine. I love my life right now. And I think a lot of people wait to wait to until this happens, then I can do this. Like I used to say, I'm going to wait until I'm in a relationship before I get a dog because I don't want to take on that by myself. I want to wait to travel until I'm with someone or married, or I want to wait to buy a house. I'm going to wait to do this. I'm going to wait till the pandemic's over to start this podcast. I used to want to wait for everything. And so recently I'm like, you know what am I waiting for? I'm going to get the dog because I want a dog. I'm going to start traveling. I'm going to start the podcast because we have technology, and so starting to say yes to a lot of things. And I'm planning on traveling soon. It's like I want to just live life and stop like waiting, and I think that as society, we're taught that we're supposed to do things a certain way. Like you were saying, you're supposed to be a doctor or whatever your parents wanted you to be. And I was supposed to get married at 25 and have babies. And I even see it in my 3-year-old niece. She's like, do I have to get married? And I'm like, you don't have to get married, but I'm a girl, so I have to get married. I'm like, that doesn't mean you have to get married. She's like, do I have to marry a boy? And I'm like, I mean, you don't have to, but if you want. She's like very into that, like figuring things out. And I'm like, well, that's where it starts, is like, then you have this idea of how your life is supposed to be, when really there's no way it's supposed to be. And if we stop fighting it and just let life happen, I feel like we'd be a lot more zen. That's like where I'm at right now.
No, you hit it right on the money. It's like Bruce Lee says, be like Walter.
Yeah.
You have to just kind of go with the flow. Everybody should have a plan. Everybody should have aspirations and passion, but
of course,
sometimes life, takes a left turn, and you just gotta go with the flow. And but I do believe in everything you're saying, is like reading the right books and exercise and meditation and whatever spirituality you're into, whether it's religion or Buddhism or whatever you're into. And the last thing you mentioned, activation, being proactive, being able to just say, you know what, I'm not going to wait for this person. I'm just going to go and do it. Whether it's a friend, a mate, a business situation, just get up and go do it. Mm-hmm. When I started this comedy club in Venice Beach, I never thought I don't really even perform on it that much. I kind of just do the housekeeping, but I'm more of like booking it. But I go up on stage and I kind of just break down the rules and thanks for coming and let's bring up the host. And I save my comedy for when I go on the road. But had I not started this comedy show, I don't know what I'd be doing. Mm-hmm. But that's activated so many different opportunities. Things. Like people are calling me, which is it's a great position to be in. I don't have to really pick up the phone and reach out to comedians or other venues and buyers, and even it's funny, like even managers and agents are calling me and stuff now. I'm just like, which I don't like dealing with, but it's a good position to be in, and it's a good problem to have. But if I was sitting around dwelling, depressed, waiting for the phone to ring, that's when implosion happens, and that's when people self-destruct.
100%. Yep. So where do you just see yourself going next? Is there like a plan that you have, or like you were saying, to take this to different venues? Is that like your main focus now that things are kind of opening back up a little bit? On
the career side, I'm just going to ride this like comedy wave that's reopening back up, whether it's producing shows and or touring. There's a couple of stuff that I have in the pipeline just as a comic that I'll go do, tours and whatnot, domestically and internationally. I feel like our Venice Comedy Compound it's a nice little gem. It's a nice little 60-seat outdoor venue. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but the payoff is worth it. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to kind of focus on that. But I also have a couple TV shows and a movie and some things that on the entertainment side, film and television wise. I want to continue to develop and try to sell, maybe direct my next movie or documentary. But on the personal side, really just kind of get my body, mind, and soul in sync with exercise and meditation and rest. Trying to, try new things, challenge myself, face my fears, that kind of thing. I think sitting around being stagnant, it's like the devil's work. It's just like somebody told me a really funny saying. When you don't get out of bed every day, the devil's doing his job. Mm-hmm. So, I get up every morning, make my coffee, make the bed, brush my teeth. Like, it's consistency and discipline. Yeah, and if you're not that, and I think on the friendship tip, I've been pretty concise and confined with my existing friends. Every once in a while, if I really like somebody's energy and their soul, I'll make it an effort to create a friendship with them. But I feel like people's motives these days, they're just not coming from a good place all the time. Mm-hmm. So you never know who's trying to be your friend, what they want. Yeah. Well, they might want something from you, or they need like you said, a ticket to a thing or a phone call or a connection or whatever. And it's just like, let's just be friends, and the business stuff will come later. And then I think on the romance side of things, and you probably know this, more than a lot of us, is, the dating scene in LA can be tough, and it's a really kind of tricky road to navigate. So I've just been kind of like open to, I've been single for a long time, so I've just been enjoying being single, but open to that partnership if it's out there and it exists. And it's all about law of attraction. What are you attracting? How much do you love yourself? When you love yourself, other people love you, and that whole thing. Yep. So just being happy in my, during the pandemic, I spent a lot of time alone. When I lived in Asia, I spent a lot of time alone. I taught myself how to cook. I tried new things. I started riding my bike, down. I always ride my bike, but I started riding it down to like Manhattan Beach and back, and just doing that little coastal ride, and doing it alone, which is nice because I can just hear my thoughts, talk to myself. And just really kind of enjoying my independence. I see some of my friends who have kids and a lovely family and beautiful kids for that matter. I also see how taxing it can be to have children. And I would never want to bring a human being into the world with a partner that I didn't have that 100% connection with. A lot of people are just, like you said, society and the book says you need to get married, you have to have kids, you have to buy a house.
Right.
You don't have to do anything.
Yeah, and I'm on that same page. I was talking about this. I feel the same exact way, and I've seen too many marriages end because they felt pressure that was the next step in their life, and they weren't truly in love, and then they brought kids into the world, and then that made it more intense for them and harder for them in their marriage, and then it doesn't work out, and now these kids are, it happens all the time, obviously, divorce, and like kids will be fine, but it does, like, it's hard on them. And I have always told myself I will never get married unless I just felt like this is somebody I couldn't live without, and I wanted to be with them, and they wanted to be with me, and we could, create together, whatever that looks like or what that means. And there would be a purpose, not just, like, this is the next step and we've been together for this long, so I guess we'll get married. Like, that's just never worked for me. So I 100% agree with what you say. And it's just, as long as you're open to it and you just love yourself and know what you're worth, I I think that it'll just like come when it's the time, you know?
Yeah. And I think going back to the whole, laws of attraction, it's like really kind of putting it out there without being eager or desperate, but like
Mm-hmm.
making your intentions clear with the universe. I read a book a while back. What was it called? I forgot the name of the book. It was a long time ago, but basically talked about how the universe is like a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go into a restaurant, you get the menu and you look at the menu and then you place your order. So you place your order with the universe. This year I'd like to have X, Y, and Z.
Right.
But what you want may not be on the menu.
Right.
So you get the alternative thing. Do you want salmon or steak? You kind of have to be really descriptive and specific about it,
Mm-hmm.
because the universe it's a powerful thing that holds, magnetic, telecommunicate, like all the energies that are kind of flowing, good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's easy to kind of receive them and pick them up. And I've been, like I said, famous and guilty for both.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, I'm just grateful. Every day is a new day, and I try to just, even when I'm in a bad mood or wake up a little cranky or not feeling 100%, I really like have to trick myself to get in a good mood.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like faking it till you make it.
Yeah.
A little bit. Force myself to smile.
Yeah.
Force say in my head, hey, you're beautiful. I love myself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, because how many people a day are saying that to you?
Exactly.
Sometimes not.
Sometimes not. It's true.
I mean, sometimes you'll get likes on your social media or a cool comment or a heart or whatever. That's fine. But how many people are actually calling you every day saying, you're beautiful, you're great, I love you? It's not common.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of be your own self-reminder, I think. And
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
what about you?
Way of living. Yeah,
what's
I'm good. So yeah, just well, as far as now, just things are opening back up. Clients are coming back. New clients are coming into my life. This dog, which I need to take out or she's going to go crazy. She probably needs to go to the bathroom, but we're working on the potty training right now. So yeah, just dealing with that. Seeing family a lot more. I'm hoping to start traveling soon. I have friends in Scotland that I haven't seen in a while, and I've never been to Scotland, and I've always wanted to go, and I've wanted to go around Europe, and I want to go to Italy because that's where my family on my dad's side is originally from. And so I'm planning a trip to go out there and see, my friends that I haven't seen in a while, and then just travel around. And now, that I've been in this pandemic for so long and realized that I could still work over FaceTime and Zoom and travel a little bit, I'm like, all right, it's on. Like I could still work a little bit, travel. Like I'm really excited about it. So, but yeah, just that really. I mean, as far as like dating goes, like it's not a huge priority right now. I have gone out on a few dates here and there. But and then we'll wrap up. I'm sorry, we're taking forever, but I mean, I could talk to you forever, but I really, it's interesting. It used to be like, I think when I wasn't so self-aware, and so, just, I guess, mature, like, or the person I am today, I 6-pack and a smile would do it for me. Like, and now that doesn't, I need way more than that. And so dating in LA is very interesting because it's, me trying to find someone that like is on the same level spiritually and emotionally as me, and then also being physically attracted to them, and then having the same type of lifestyle, because I do go to bed early, I get up early for work, I'm very active, I eat healthy, and so finding somebody that has all those things, that are driven, that are successful in some way, doing what they're passionate about. I tend to go for more creative people because I am a creative person, and I feel like just the typical, not that there's anything wrong with it, but for me, someone who has just a 9 to 5 that they're not really passionate about, that they come home and they're just grumpy all the time, like that doesn't do it for me. So, but finding somebody that has all those things that aren't a narcissist, that's hard in this town. And so I'm just, like living life. And if somebody comes in that fits what I'm looking for, then great. And if not, then that's fine too. I am really at a place right now where I'm really happy with what I have. And so I think that that's just the most important thing. And finally gonna travel. I think I'm just looking forward to that and getting everything in order to do that. So that, the dog, work, and then I also have like the clothing line that I'm working on, and then just the podcast. And so yeah, and I have to come check out your comedy.
Come by this weekend
comedy show. I will definitely. Well, I won't be around this weekend, but if you have something, because it's Easter weekend, I'm going home. But next weekend, I would love to come check it out. And thank you for taking the time to come on. I have loved this. I could talk to you forever.
Let's do it again. Again sometime.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I look forward to meeting you in person.
Let's grab coffee or do a bike ride. I'm right down the road.
Definitely. Let's do it. Let's set it up.
Let me know. Awesome.
Thank you so much. We'll talk.
Thank you, dear. Best of luck.
Thank you. You too. Bye.